Welcome to the Experience Action Podcast. I'm Jeannie Walters, and I'm so excited because this is the CX Pulse Check. Once a month, we check in with the news and current events, what's happening in the world of customer experience, where are the ideas and insights that we can learn from as CX leaders. And I am so excited, and you should be too, because we have with us today a very special co-host, my friend and the head of content at Greenbook, Karen Lynch. Karen, it's so nice to see you. How are you today?
I am well, Jeannie. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you too.
Thank you. And, I would love to hear, a little bit more about you. What should our listeners and viewers know about Karen?
Well, I start off telling everybody I had an entire career as a qualitative marketing researcher before joining Greenbook just 2.5 years ago. So my work was adjacent to CX, right? But in the world of just marketing research, helping customers have their voices heard by people
Mhm.
that need to hear them for whatever might be happening and whatever initiatives and business challenges corporations were trying to address. So
Mhm.
I did that for quite a long time. The position at Greenbook came up, and it was just at a point in my life where I was like, you know what, I just need to stop being such a road warrior, because I had qualitative researchers are on the road all the time,
Mhm.
and needed the next creative adventure. So I started this career, and now I at Greenbook, if you're not familiar with it, we're a multimedia company that serves the insights and analytics industry. So we have articles, we put on events, the IIEX event series. I'm curating speakers. I'm contracting with authors. I'm running a podcast. We have a weekly live stream, everything to keep the insights and analytics industry kind of informed and ahead of the curve. So
Excellent.
that's what I'm doing now. It's been a cool 30 plus years in this working world, and I've loved almost every minute.
Almost every minute. That's fair, I think. Well, I thought you would be a great co-host because, when you talk about gathering insights and really listening to customers, it seems like such a no-brainer, and it seems like we have all these different tools now, right? Like the customer experience industry overall has been kind of consumed by artificial intelligence and natural language processing and all of these things, large language models. And so when we look at what's happening there, it's so easy to think, oh, we're listening everywhere we should be and getting all the insights we need. But some of the things that we're going to talk about today actually show how important it is to just bring that humanity to it, the nuance, understanding kind of why we're doing these things. So, the first thing I would love to talk about here is what's happening with Sonos, which is an audio tool, stereo system, all those things. And so they actually shared this headline. This is on CMS Wire, and it says Sonos app redesign fail, customer outrage and falling stock prices. Now, they are not the only ones who have gone through something like this. But what I found really interesting about this is that they had such loyal customers. They had customers who really sang their praises everywhere they went. They had evangelists and they really missed the mark here. And so when you dive into this, there are so many reasons why, but what are some of the things that you see that maybe could have gone wrong here?
Well, it's interesting because, I'm sort of, what do you call that? When you're, looking at it with hindsight, kind of looking at it from this perspective, because wasn't tracking this trend and what was going on here, but I did try to reverse engineer what I was seeing. And
Mhm.
what I'm seeing by going on, say I'm on X or Twitter, and I'm seeing um the customer complaints, very public complaints about this, and I'm seeing a very quick social media response. But it
Mhm.
feels too little too late. My question is, were they asking for all that feedback, or being as diligent about responding to everything prior to this launch? Did they know what was
Right.
coming their way? Because right now they certainly are trying to answer everything that is popping up socially. I wonder if they
Mhm.
hired, more social media strategists because of this debacle, as
I
they're like,
wondered that too
y
based
you
on
know
how they're handling it. Yep.
yeah, they're handling it really well at this point. So that's a big
Mhm.
question for me, is, were they on it before? Did they catch it early? I do
Mhm.
know that, when there's app updates, I mean, I don't pretend for a minute to fully understand all of the technology that gets changed and how you can make one change and other things fall apart. But
Mhm.
it would seem to me that for a company that large, they should have had that locked up.
Yep. Yep.
You'd think.
Yep. Well, and I think you kind of touched on this, but I think one of the things that I really started wondering about is how often in these big organizations do we have these projects that we get really excited about, right? Like we announce them, we've got teams working on them, and we start losing sight of kind of who we're serving, what they're really looking for. Are we checking in enough with them? Are we closing the loop on some of these things? So that was one thing, because in a way, this is an example of user experience versus customer experience and how it
Right.
all fits together. And
Right.
so maybe they had a app development team or a user experience team working on this, and they were not even connected to the customer feedback cycles. They weren't even
Right.
listening because they weren't really asked to do that. So
Right.
I see this all the time with the organizations we work with, where somebody's working on a project over on one side of the organization and somebody's got another thing. Even in my little team, sometimes I have
Yeah.
used the word silo, right? Like I've said, oh my gosh, I think we're siloing. This is like what we tell our
Right,
clients not to
tell
do.
people not to do. Right,
But
are the changes that they made the changes that their customers really wanted? Those
right.
loyal customers, those
Yeah.
ambassadors, did they want those changes? Because if
Mhm.
they didn't, then this was just a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there
Yep.
are times, probably the closest thing I have is just iPhone usage, where I'll complain about something about my phone, and my husband will say, "Oh, be patient, they'll fix that."
Mhm.
So, he's very, generous in that, right? He knows that customer feedback will result in a change in the Apple
Right.
organization because they are very responsive to customer feedback, not just
Mhm.
UX feedback, right? And what
Yep.
certainly there are teams that go out there and try to tackle what could be done, what is possible, and they have a lot of innovation that way. But
Mhm.
there's a line between, going too far with innovation when you've got customer needs that are
Yep.
vocal and clear.
And I think another great point there is you can be super focused on innovation, but if customers aren't ready for those changes or
Yeah,
they aren't really prepared for a change, like humans resist change, we really
yeah,
do. And so
yeah,
trying to guide somebody through something after they're comfortable and trying to guide them through that change is a whole practice unto itself. And so I think we have to really think about this as an example of both internal communication strategy, but also how do we really understand the journey of the rollout for customers so that we can make that as seamless and easy as possible.
yeah.
So okay, so the next thing I have is a little out of scope of customer experience usually, but I thought it was fun. So, as most people know, here we are, and we are in September 2024, and there's this election you may have heard about coming up.
May have heard about. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for the first time in a long time, because Kamala Harris is running and the Democratic candidate, we have a candidate whose name ends with an S. And this has created all sorts of angst. And I think it's just, as the grammar nerd that I am, I get a kick out of it, but also because it's just another example of like things you didn't think you had to think about, right?
Right.
Like,
Well, unless you had one of those last names like Lynch, which has had to think about,
oh,
I've had to think about things like possessive and
yeah,
plural for a last name like Lynch because it has that funny ch at the end,
right,
right? So,
right.
as soon as I saw this, I thought, oh, it's so interesting to where do we place the apostrophe in a
Yep,
name like Harris? And then also this article will go on to say like in a name like Walls, because again, I've had the name Lynch. So, for
yeah,
instance, we were Lynch's Lynches, and at
yep,
first I found that really irritating because I was never that way with my maiden name. Like we just threw an S on the end
yeah,
and we were done when we were plural. And then same thing with the possessive, but Lynch's, I had to, when I took the name Lynch, and now we're going back 25 years, right? When I took the name, I had to do the research and say, when I'm raising my children, how will I teach them to do this?
right,
It
right.
was a thought process. So anyway, so I saw this and I'm
That's
like,
so
oh yes.
funny. This is a headline from The Guardian, and the headline is Harris with an apostrophe at the end of the S, or Harris's, which is apostrophe S after the ending S in Harris. See, it's very confusing when you talk about it too. Apostrophe row divides grammar nerds.
I know, and you can see by my excitement, you can see that I am one. Because literally this is something that I would want to dig into, and I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah. Well,
But
and there
you
are
do have
cultural
to think
things
about it,
too.
and what's interesting, what I was about to say, before you so mindfully and kindly brought us all together on the same page, is that her team should have known about this. They should have
Mhm.
been like, "What's going to be our grammar protocol?"
That's
And
right.
it shouldn't be going back and forth. They should be sending out a style guide to everybody saying,
Yep.
"Here's how we handle it."
That's exactly right. And I have a similar story where I married into the name Walters,
Yeah.
and it has an S on the end.
Yes.
And so I literally, with our holiday cards and our return address and things like that, I like to say the Walters family to avoid
Yes.
the whole subject.
Just avoid the whole damn subject. I totally get that, because for a while there, we'd be the Lynch family. I love when things would show up to our house, it was always to the Lynch family, because other
Yeah.
people don't wanna deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, that solves the problem maybe temporarily, but
Yeah.
it works for me.
Yes.
But I thought to your point, I think this is another example of like one of these small things that in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Probably not. But it matters enough to just irritate somebody or to just make somebody think a little extra hard. And when we're trying to really serve a community, when we're trying to provide something for a large group, we have to think about things like this and get ahead of it. And to your point, a style guide would be great for that. Universities are known for this, right? Universities and companies that they put out style guides for their brand, for how do you say this? Do we capitalize here or not? Do we
Right,
hyphenate? Do we do
right.
all these things? Because otherwise, you're basically saying it's the Wild West. You can do
Right,
whatever you
right.
want.
And you
And then
wanna
it
be in
gets
charge of
crazy.
the conversation about you. So,
Yes.
again, if I'm not, they didn't ask me if I wanted that role, but if I was in charge of the campaign semantically, from a content standpoint, that would
Yep.
be one of the first things I'd collaborate with the marketing team about. Even here
Mhm.
at Greenbook, at one point, Greenbook had a capital B for in book, right? It was
Mhm.
capital G, REEN, capital B, OOK. We changed that within the last year to the lowercase b.
Oh,
And
boy.
I am telling you, we had to work with marketing, work with our graphic team, work with then our communications to make sure everybody knew we have changed stylistically. But it's a
Mhm.
big effort, a mindful effort, because the branding matters. So
Yes.
their team needs, in my opinion, needed to be ahead of this, and probably
Mhm.
could still stand to get ahead of it and
Mhm.
stop the nonsense and the bickering back and forth between the grammar nerds.
Oh, we will never stop bickering. We will never.
I'm
AP
so
Style Guide
clear.
versus Chicago Manual of Style, right? Like,
Exactly, exactly. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. But yeah.
so well, and another thing that kind of struck me about this that the Guardian article dove into was there are differences in just regions and dialects and culture and things like that, that sometimes these things are handled differently. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that one is wrong. It means that we have to kind of honor what the both intention of the communication is and respect kind of the brand, if you will, of who is actually leading that. And I think that's something that as we talk about even inclusive customer experiences and making sure that we are careful with our language, that's always something to be aware of too. And we see that a lot in customer experience work, where translations are a great example, where somebody will translate an instruction manual and assume that Spanish is Spanish everywhere, but it can be different.
Yeah.
Puerto Rican Spanish is different than Spanish in Spain and all of these different nuances. And so I think it's another reminder of, and you use the word mindful, which I really love, like being mindful of these things, because even though it seems little and it seems like it doesn't matter, it has an impact.
Well, and if you are a brand, right, and if you distill a candidate down to their personal brand, right, that's who is being marketed to the
Mhm.
American people. You need to own the integrity of the brand, or the conversation will be about something like this, and that's not really going to be helpful. And again, not a strategist. Hashtag not a strategist. But the people that are strategists, this isn't what they want people talking about,
Right.
So if they owned this and controlled the semantic narrative, then
Mhm.
there wouldn't even be this type of article out there. It would just be like, oh, we've all learned something. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
Instead of, which is it? Why is it going back and forth? Why are they inconsistent? It opens the door to thoughts that shouldn't be there.
That's another great point that, if people are talking about this, they're not talking about the things that you want them to talk about or focus on. So
Yeah.
if you're not thinking about where the apostrophe goes, this is your reminder.
Yeah. Yes. We hope you're listening. It's part of our customer experience.
That's right.
Right.
Love it. Well, this last one, I'm going to admit a bias here because I brought this up because I was like, well, let's talk about insights and research, shall we?
We shall. We shall.
So this is from, and you never know where I'm going to pull these articles. We pulled from all sorts of places, but this is from the Home Furnishings Association. And the headline is Customer Journey Insights from 2024 Furniture Shopping Trends Study. And I found this interesting because when we talk about kind of customer behavior, a lot of times we break that into kind of everyday purchases or these bigger purchases, right? And what does furniture say? And furniture traditionally has been one of those bigger purchases, but people are starting to treat it differently. And there are more options, and we can order a lamp on Amazon and it shows up the next day, or use the virtual room on the Lazy Boy app and see if that will fit in. So there are all sorts of different ways. But the trends here, even though it was about furniture shopping, it felt very universal in many ways around evolving customer behavior and preferences. And really just that whole idea that I always cringe a little when organizational leaders will say to me, well, our digital shoppers do this and our retail shoppers do this, because that's all of us now. We are doing both all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So just curious, what did you think about this research? Anything that you want to highlight
Well,
from
of
it?
course, I dug into the entire thing, downloaded the full report, all the way down into the method, read the
Love it.
methodology. Like, of course, this is the one I was like, oh yeah, I'm spending some time here. So thank you. This is fun. Well, here's a couple things. First of all, I always love to see myself in findings. So that's one of the ways I think I always have kind of have had empathy for respondents in general, is if I see myself in them. So of course
Mhm.
I shop online before I buy.
Right.
And I have been thinking about furniture purchases. And of course, I've done it in all the different ways, from ordering, something to my left right here from IKEA and having it show
Mhm.
up and having to build it, to from going to a furniture store with something generally in mind, but needing some help from a human being who was going to help me also find the right coffee table to go with the new couch, and
Mhm.
from ordering, online, a mattress online at Costco for a spare bedroom that I just didn't want to invest that much mental energy. Like, I've done it all.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
what I think is consistent across the board is with furniture, and I don't know how many categories this is true in, but the shopping for furniture's experience, it has the person in the mindset of, how am I going to experience this piece of furniture in my home? And that's why
Mhm.
this was really interesting, because it's not just the shopping experience, it's the
Right.
living with this purchase experience.
Mhm.
What will my experience be at my desk once I buy this piece of furniture? Or what will my experience be in my living room? So from a CX perspective, I thought, really cool. This report starts talking about 3D planning and 3D configurations, and
Mhm.
how consumers want to see what an object is like in their own home.
That's
I'm
right.
like, of course, that's what it's all about. Anyway, it was a little
That's
bit
right.
meta for me
Yeah.
to go there, but that's where I went.
I love it. I love it. And, several years ago, it sounds funny, but we have Pokemon to thank for some of this
Yeah.
comfort level, because people became really comfortable with augmented reality.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, brands started realizing we could do more with this, right? You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
start showing things in the space. You can actually play around now with AI, with moving things virtually to really see what it looks like. I have in this office, you can probably see it behind me. I'm in an alcove a little bit. And so I always have to be aware of the furniture that we bring in to this space. And I have found that when I'm digitally researching in advance or shopping in advance, that is a big factor for me. If you don't have the right tools, the right information for me, I'm going to move on,
Yeah.
right? I'm not even going to waste my time because I've been burned in the past.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other thing is like there's a step-by-step process that people take, even if it's 3 steps in 30 seconds, they're
Yeah.
still seeking certain information. They're looking for a comfort level about their real lives. This is what I always talk about in journey mapping. Like we talk about people like they're just going to march through the journey, do 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 do,
Yeah.
and really they're just living their lives.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get stuff done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought this was just kind of reinforcing some of the trends that we've been seeing, not just with furniture, but throughout. But furniture is such a great example because it's a more thoughtful process or purchase, I should say.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people are still treating it differently than they did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not that
Sure.
huge investment of the past that a lot of people treated it as, which there are pros and cons to that. We won't get into that today, but
I know we will age ourselves if we start talking about, when we first were married and we wanted to buy the Ethan Allen furniture
oh,
that
yeah.
lasted our lifetimes,
Yeah,
like that was a thing at one point, was to buy the most solid couch you could,
that's right.
instead of now, which is like if I was starting it all over, like the advice is just buy the IKEA couch because for heaven's sakes, your children are going to trash it.
Right.
Like,
And then you'll get a puppy and then
puppy. And then you'll get lazy and you'll spill your coffee on it. So
I
what
mean,
were you thinking getting a white couch?
right. And it's not like you have a chamois around. Just flip the cushion. You're fine.
Yeah, no, I know. But it's true, right? And I think that one of the things that we do, that I did in the qualitative research space, I shouldn't speak on behalf of all qualitative researchers, is when we were walking through customer journeys with people, I often would do an exercise with emotions cards, and I'd have people
Mhm.
kind of match the card to the stage of their journey. And what are you feeling at this stage? What were you feeling when you did this? And so on and so forth. And you think about the online shopping part of it, like those are all like for the most part pretty positive because you're in control, you're feeling
Mhm.
confident, you are making decisions, you're ruling things out, like you are owning that stage of it. You're like
Yes.
being really decisive about price points. You're like, no, I can put this filter in place to make sure I don't see a couch that's more than $1,000 or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Like you are really empowered online
Mhm.
shopping, and I think that that's probably you know probably is definitely present in furniture and mattress shopping, right? Is that feeling of I don't want this to get out of control, so I'm owning it before you
Mhm.
go out to the store. That maybe it's not as important for other purchases to do so much time online, but I
Yeah.
just,
No,
from a
I think
customer
that's a great
experience
point. And the
standpoint, yeah,
filters and I mean now I've shopped for items where you can say like these are the colors, right? Like I need these colors. I
yeah,
need this size. I need it to be delivered by Tuesday.
right,
And so you're right. Like we put up blinders that actually make it better.
yeah, yeah,
Um and my husband and I have a story of like when we were looking for something, I can't remember what piece of furniture, but we went into one of those big furniture stores and nobody else was there except for the salespeople. And there was one guy with a clipboard who had his eye on us, who wouldn't let us just browse,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
left the store.
yeah, because
And
you
I'm
just
like,
wanted to
he
browse.
thinks we
Yeah,
just didn't find what we needed, but we were actually annoyed because he wasn't giving us the space that we
yeah,
needed. And
yeah,
so you're right about control. Like we all want that control to with our own environment, our own choices, everything. So
right,
yeah, that's an interesting point. But I think the bottom line is we are all omni-channel shoppers now.
right,
And I think that's the piece that there are still organizations out there missing that or designing things differently as if they're different people. And they're
yeah.
really, really not. There's so much overlap now. The percentage of people who only shop in store is getting pretty low.
Yeah. Well, and if you tie it up with a nice bow to kind of what we're talking about with the user experience, the UX experience with
Yeah.
Sonos at the beginning of this call, I have a wedding to go to Saturday. I didn't love the dress that I had originally intended for this wedding because it's going to be colder in upstate New York than
Mhm.
I might have thought it was when I bought a sleeveless dress. So I went to one of my favorite clothing stores online. There happens to be one in my town, but I figured let me just see what the assortment is online. I found something. I'm like, oh, let me just order it
Mhm.
Here, I can always pick it up in store if it can't be shipped to me overnight, and the charge wouldn't go through. And from a UX standpoint,
Mhm.
that's infuriating. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I sat at my desk. Granted, I only sat at my desk, but I went through this whole process. One of my favorite stores, the charge wouldn't go through. So I sure as heck didn't go there because I
Right.
was so annoyed with one of my favorite stores where I always can find something because I'm like,
Mhm.
no, it's not going to work. If I can't shop online when I might need to shop online, then
Yep.
you're losing me as a brick and mortar customer also because I'm annoyed with you.
That's
So
right.
CX and UX in that context are completely associated, and Sonos should have known better.
Yeah. And there it is. We've come full circle. Amazing. This is why you're a pro, Karen.
Well, you make it easy. You make it easy, my friend.
Well, thank you so much for being here and for adding your insights. And I hope everybody goes to check out Greenbook. You all do great, great work. And
Yeah,
I think that
thank you.
there are just resources for a lot of us. And I know many people like myself are focused on CX and, focused on the strategy of it. Insights and research and analytics, all of that is such a huge part of what we do that if you're not well versed in at least understanding how to read some of the reports, how to understand what's going on, what are the best ways of applying research and insights, that is part of this role. So Greenbook is a great resource for you there
Oh,
too.
thank you. Thank you.
So
Yeah, no, we're glad to be out there for people. It makes me feel good that I can help people be more successful in their roles, whether they're
mhm,
in insights, in data and analytics, in CX, across the
mhm.
board. It brings me kind of great fulfillment that I can do what I'm doing right now.
That's awesome. Well, we feel that. So thank you for being here. And thank you for being here at Experience Action Podcast. You make it worth my while too. So we love hearing from you. So keep sending in those questions. And we'll be back next month with another check of the CX Pulse Check episode. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.